Well, we are very enthusiastic to see that things are starting to move. We always thought that starting with leaders, particularly with heads of state, was going to provide additional input to the negotiation and political clarity that was required. When we heard President Hollande, Chancellor Merkel, but also President Correa, Evo Morales, and the others, you got a perception that there is a common understanding of the quite the need for action. That's completely clear, and that also that this agreement needs to be fair and balanced. And we call it upon the notion of climate justice. Others would simply say that it's required for the survival of all. But that's the sense of urgency is there, and the need for action that provides for negotiators to be more flexible on the ground.
The words climate justice and historical responsibility have come out in previous years, and many say they are counterproductive. Do you think it's still worthwhile campaigning for that at these talks?
It is important to understand that there is always a relative notion on what can be counterproductive. It could be counterproductive if you are thinking an agreement that will not be sufficient for everyone. But in the medium and the long term, you will go back and you will see that the need to put in on the table the need for differentiated action so that everybody can actually contribute, but in different terms, is very important. So otherwise we will be in an asymmetric game of information saying that we can do what we can actually do not, and that will be in completely in negative terms for the environment.
Ecuador is a member of the ALBA negotiating bloc. How much discussion have you had before these negotiations? And do you think we might see scenes of what happened in 2009 in Copenhagen and 2010, where ALBA countries were happy to stand up and to say it how it was to other countries?
I wouldn't like to speak on behalf of all the members, but it is clear that ALBA has been playing a role as the voice of conscience for these negotiations, a voice of principles, and we believe we represent those who are the poorest in the planet. So if we have that perception, we understand the role that we need to play in this negotiation. It is not the easy one. Sometimes do the right thing is not easy, but we believe that we need to continue doing it, not only in terms of the negotiation, but we are doing it at home. We understand we are vulnerable. We are doing our part at home, and we are proposing at the international level very concrete proposals. It is not only that we are working on very large areas, we are putting on the table some notions that we can actually work on, such as the daily Correa tax that President Correa has proposed, or the concept of net avoided emissions, through which developing countries could be compensated for the environmental services they provide. This is very concrete and very positive. We just need to work around the idea.
But are you expecting those two things you mentioned, the net avoided emissions proposal and the daily Correa tax, to make it in? Do we have time for these 2 weeks to bring up new ideas? Do we not need to get a slim text and get an agreement?
Yeah. For us, Paris is not the ending game. It's just the starting of the implementation phase. So it's very important for us to leave on the table important concepts that will come back to us as we move on. For instance, we understand that in the agreements, mechanisms themselves do not appear, but we need to set the building blocks so that we continue our talks. It is definitely necessary in this agreement to have some additional resources coming in. There is no clarity on that. So in the next 15 days is a great final opportunity for countries to provide the resources that we need, whether for conditional or unconditional INDCs.
What are we expecting to hear more about climate finance? Do you think, so far the figure is 100 billion a year by 2020. Are we going to get any more solid proposals by 2030 this year? What is the red line for Ecuador here on finance, with it being so important?
Well, I think that the deadlines have been set by the IPCC, the Stern report, and other ones. If we continue to delay actions, and by that I mean that if we continue to push on the deadline for providing resources, we are all going to be impacted. Forests will be now no anymore sinks, but they are continuing to release now the emissions. So if we need to act in terms of climate action and to be ambitious, we need the resources flowing not only for developing countries but the overall economic system.
The OECD says the figure for 2013 to 14 was around 60 billion. Is that so? We're surely on course to the 100 billion. Do you agree with that figure, that we're doing enough?
It is difficult to measure. We have been pushing for the need for better conditions of measuring the accountability. We need transparency also in terms of financing resources, not only how we use them, but where they come from. Somebody could come from different figures. I can tell you right now what we know there is in the Green Climate Fund is only 10% of that. So that's what it really concerns, and that the need for action and adaptation measures in small island developing states is much more larger than whatever is already in the Green Climate Fund.
The United States have made it very clear that they don't want a legally binding agreement. What do you make of that?
Well, what we understand is the United States have already introduced some executive measures at the home, and they want to provide legitimacy to those at the international level.
So you think it's fair to nuance their argument is not simply they are doing things at home, there have been executive measures and that's enough?
That's what they have been able to put on the table. What I can tell you is that there is no right for any country to kidnap the negotiation process and condition the outcome for the rest of us.
And that's what you think America have been doing so far?
Well, there is a few countries that they believe that they can play a critical role on this, and instead of providing a positive leading role, what they have been able to do so far is condition an outcome to the one that we can perceive it will come in this negotiation, which has a less reduced ambition, with no resources and with no legal bindiness, so that we can follow up on the track for implementation purposes.
Just finally, talk to me about Latin American unity. You've been the coordinator for CELAC, a group of about 30 Latin American and Caribbean states. Are we going to get a joint declaration here, and what does that say about the continent's position on climate change?
That's what we hope. We are currently the pro-tempore presidency of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. We have been working the whole year around. We started back in Costa Rica during the summit, and we expect to finish back in the next summit that is going to take place in Quito. Okay. So Paris for us is a middle point in terms that we are launching a regional agenda on climate that we will hope it will be sufficient and attractive to everyone in terms of action. We understand that you require national action, but you also need to think that we need to invest a lot of regional infrastructure and connectivity. So all those elements provide for us to have a common idea of what we need. But at the same time, we also understand that we have 33 countries, very diverse, very different political systems that make it difficult for us to reach an agreement. But we will hope that in the next few days we will finalize it.
But wouldn't it have been more effective to get it out at Paris? You know, you've had a few months to get some declaration. Are we going to get a lowest common denominator declaration from CELAC? Which, what are you?
I'm cautiously optimistic, but I believe we will do it. We are just finalizing some of the language we have two. One is a technical position, and the other one is a ministerial declaration. What we will hope is this will be clarified in the next few days, and that we will allow ourselves to promote the needs for our people.
Climate justice is going to be in there, those names, those words?
The notion of climate justice is pretty broad. We perceive it that CELAC has a top priority, and that is to work to eradicate extreme poverty. So that notion is inside of it. And what we will hope is that elements of legal bindingness, finance, and also solidarity to some of the members due to the vulnerability that small island development states face will be in place. But it is up to countries to get around the notion that we need a common position simply to have a better standing in this negotiation.
Daniel Ortega Pacheco, thank you very much.